We are live. Caleb is with me tonight. We have a super freaky, scary show tonight. It is October, which is, of course, the month of Halloween and Samhain and all of the dark, creepy people, all of the things that Holly and I exposed in the Salem witchcraft stuff and their one day that the Satanists love to celebrate and that they get to mock everybody for because they go around celebrating Halloween not knowing what it really means and all. We're going to bring some light to that today. And I'm going to just say viewer discretion is advised for this episode. Some of this stuff is going to be pretty dark and pretty scary. Not, something that young people should probably be listening to right away. Kevin Carr, thank you so much for the $10 donation just now. I really appreciate that. Basically what Caleb and I are going to be discussing is the history of vampirism and human sacrifice. It ties into the Hebraic Old Testament or so-called Old Testament, and the origins tie in directly to human and animal sacrifices and all of the biblical instances that I discovered, which we'll be going into, and this may end up being a two-part series, but all of the biblical references that I discovered from the Old Testament were about it was ordered by God to not eat blood, and that obviously those who would be the Satanists would go ahead and eat the blood. They would defy natural law or the laws of Moses by eating the blood, and we'll get into explaining that. But they would eat the blood, and then in the New Testament, we find that Jesus is the final sacrifice, and nobody is to eat the blood again. And so, again, we'll be covering all of that. For those of you who like to play the drinking game, this is going to put you guys under the table tonight. So I apologize for the many Huxley references in advance. So maybe you should give up drinking rather than playing the drinking game every time we mention Huxley. So anyway, Caleb, welcome back.
Thanks, Greg. Glad to be back, as always. So today we're going to be talking about vampires. A lot of people are going to be like, what? Vampires are real? What does that mean? Where we're going to be going into is the roots of the myth, trying to figure out what are the foundations of the myth, give you guys some grammar. We found a whole bunch of new grammar on the subject matter. We're definitely not going to be able to hit all of it today, so we'll probably do a couple parts. But right off the bat, one of the things that very interesting that I found quite a long time ago actually was garlic. Have you ever thought about what the reference to garlic is?
Well, if you asked me that day before yesterday, I would have said, no, your dogs are going a bit crazy over there.
Yeah, I'm going to mute for just a second.
Yeah. But as far as garlic, excuse me, day before yesterday, I would have said no. Yesterday, I did post up that garlic is a poison, and apparently, at least secondhand speaking, I don't have any firsthand primary citations for that, but that will probably show up soon, as it usually does. But apparently, in World War I and World War II, bullets were coated with garlic before being shot, and then when the bullet entered the person, the garlic would poison the person. Garlic, when you eat it like snake venom, is not poisonous, but if it gets directly into the bloodstream, it's apparently poisonous and also causes all sorts of mental issues, and we see garlic in so many things today. How are the dogs doing? Can you unmute now?
Yeah, I unmuted. All right, so sorry about that. So so I first came across the work of Dr. Bob Beck quite a long time ago, and he put out a video. He went to a conference and did a talk all about all his research, and he briefly mentions garlic in there, which kind of led me to do my own research, which led me to just give up garlic completely quite a long time ago, 5 years ago. After I had been an advocate of using it for all the different various medical uses that the alternative health people are always touting about, how it is a antibacterial, this and that.
Antibiotic.
Exactly.
Bio being life, anti-life. Hello.
Exactly. So one of the reasons it's important to bring this up here is it ties right into this idea. Okay, vampires, blood, they drink blood. Why is there the association? What am I talking about? Well, the actual garlic, if it ever gets into your blood, will be neurotoxic. It'll kill brain cells, and it passes the corpus callosum. It has all kinds of devastating effects. Just go watch the Bob Beck video on YouTube. Google it. It's like 5 minutes long. He kind of hits all the topics.
Not even
there.
that. I think it's like 3.5 minutes, so you really can't struggle through it like my shows.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. And then on top of that, my research, well, in my own personal experience as well, I'll add that I used to use garlic as a pesticide as a gardener quite a bit. And if you think about pesticide, a side is a killer. What do you think it's doing to the inside of your body if you're putting it in there? A lot of people are like, well, it's got antibacterial effects. Well, antibacterial, I don't like the way that, I don't like, personally, I'm kind of, I think people are aware about my beliefs about the germ theory and the environment theory a little bit. If you're not, I'm not an advocate of killing parts of the body in a war type atmosphere, like germs or invaders and all these things. I'm more of an advocate of the environment creates. It's like an epigenetic type of a situation where the environment breeds the certain things in your body to be the way that they are. And if you have a bad environment, you're going to have bad bacteria.
And so garlic, essentially, apparently you could use it to poison a bullet or something, and entering the bloodstream, it has a totally different effect. Now, I love garlic, and now I'm going to have to be reconsidering that entirely. I know Dave Asprey was putting out stuff against garlic, some years back. So interesting that that all comes full circle, because garlic is, of course, used to kill vampires. And so, and you put the garlic on a steak or whatever, you kill a vampire with a steak, but garlic around the neck and stuff like that. So now it starts actually making sense. Aha, why would you use garlic? So those connections come together. Now, all right, so let's just get right to the chase. One of the first books that the CIA published for the MKUltra program was a little book called Doors of Perception, published by a guy by the name, maybe you've all heard of him by now, Aldous Huxley. He was, of course, one of the chief architects of the CIA's MKUltra program, worked with British MI6, was an overall sociopath and megalomaniac, and he was responsible for the indirect murder of probably millions of people at this point. He was a social engineer, a eugenicist. His brother was a big eugenicist, founded UNESCO, the World Wildlife Fund, etc. Of course, Huxley's grandfather was Thomas Henry Huxley, who is the propaganda manager for Charles Darwin. And so here we go. And so this is actually from the introduction of the Doors of Perception. You don't even have to get beyond the introduction, or actually the third page of the actual book, which they're calling page 11. There are matters rested until 2 or 3 years ago. A new and perhaps highly significant fact was observed. Actually, the fact had been staring everyone in the face for several decades, but nobody, as it happened, had noticed it until a young English psychiatrist, at present working in Canada, was struck by the close similarity in chemical composition between mescaline and adrenaline. Further research revealed that lysergic acid, which of course is LSD, an extremely potent hallucinogen derived from ergot, was a structural biochemical relationship to the others. Then came the discovery that adrenochrome, which is a product of the decomposition of adrenaline, can produce many of the symptoms of observed in mescaline intoxication. But adrenochrome probably occurs spontaneously in the human body. In other words, one of us may be capable of manufacturing a chemical, minute doses of which are known to cause profound changes in consciousness. Certain of these changes are similar to those which occur in the most characteristic plague of the 20th century, schizophrenia. Is the mental disorder due to the chemical disorder, and is the chemical disorder due in turn to psychological distress affecting the adrenals? It would be rash and premature to affirm it. The most one can say is that some kind of prima facie case has been made out. Meanwhile, the clue is being systematically followed. The sleuths, biochemists, psychiatrists, psychologists are all on the trail. And so, what we have here is the chief architect, in my opinion, all the research I've done, Huxley was the chief architect behind the MK Ultra program, saying that they've discovered adrenochrome, that the effects are similar to mescaline. Now, who was it who gave Aldous Huxley his dose of mescaline for his book, Doors of Perception? Now, by golly, ladies and gentlemen, you may be surprised to find out that it was his personal doctor, a guy by the name of Dr. Humphrey Osmond. And so Humphrey Osmond, and let me see if I can find him in my notes here. Now, Humphrey Osmond, this guy, good grief. So anyway, we're going to turn to Huxley's Moksha, and it says, and this is Aldous Huxley writing to Dr. Humphrey Osmond, which is letter 182 in the letters of Aldous Huxley. Sorry, folks, I'm sure you're probably already getting hammered. But he says, I hope your administrative difficulties have been resolved and that you are now free to set on with something more interesting. I'm glad to hear that the Russians have picked up on your adrenochrome work. And, and you can also find that in Aldous Huxley Moksha, page 175. So, Cold War, Humphrey Osmond, Aldous Huxley's personal doctor. Aldous Huxley heads the CIA's MK Ultra program. His own personal doctor is sharing secrets with the Russians about his adrenochrome research. Okay. So, anyway, so then we go on here. Jay Stevens. This is from the book Storming Heaven, and I don't have the exact page number because I copied and pasted out of a PDF version, but this is going to be out of this book here. And, oh, good grief. You want to mute that for a second? And so he says, a number of theories were ventured, but one that concerns us here is the adrenochrome theory of two English psychiatrists, Humphrey Osmond and John Smithies. Now, who were the guys that created the words psychedelic and psychotomimetic and phenerethyme and hallucinogen and all of these? Oh, that's right. Yeah. It was Dr. Humphrey Osmond and Dr. John Smithies, whom I exposed in 2014 in my article, Entheogens, What's in a Name, working with MK Ultra. I think that was MK Ultra subproject 49 that Osmond worked on, or 47. But so let's see. He was MK Ultra subproject 47 and MK Ultra subproject 111, and we have his letterhead turning up in CIA documents that people can download off of the CIA website, etc., in the publicly released MK Ultra documents. But here's Dr. Humphrey Osmond. We have adrenochrome theory here. Aldous Huxley right here. Aldous Huxley heading MK Ultra and all this stuff, a big time occultist, OTO, etc., Satanist, et al. So anyway, this goes on. The first, let me just minimize this. The first schizophrenic Humphrey Osmond ever treated was a girl who told him that whenever she looked in a mirror, what she saw was an elephant. As soon as she left, Osmond trotted off to his superior to tell him of this very odd delusion. Well, you know what she has is schizophrenia, his boss said. What's that? Osmond asked. He'd heard of it, of course. And then skipping down, let's see. So they decided to concentrate on the adrenochromes, which were formed when adrenaline decomposes naturally. One of these adrenochrome, adrenochrome, seemed a likely candidate, as it is a molecular structure surprisingly similar to mescaline. So, and I heard Gino Denning at one point, who of course brought me the trivium. He had a theory at one point that when the mohel sucks on the baby's penis for the Jewish circumcision ritual, he suspected that it might actually be DMT. But what we're discovering here is that it was adrenochrome. And so we're going to be spiraling down further into all of this nasty, creepy, dark stuff. So, again, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. But Osmond swallowed his first adrenochrome in 1952. After 10 minutes, the ceiling changed color, and whenever he closed his eyes, he was overwhelmed by a swarm of dots which merged and fled with the kind of shifting pointillism one finds in a school of fish. Someone pulled out a pack of Rothschild cards, and Osmond astounded himself with the inventive shapes he was able to discover. Walking back down the corridors of the hospital... Stop. What? Walking back down the corridors of the hospital, Osmond was amazed at how sinister they seemed. Okay, so he's in a hospital, and this is... Hold on, I don't want to give it away yet. So Osmond was amazed at how sinister they seemed. What did all the cracks in the floor mean? And why were there so many of them? His colleagues were delighted with his behavior. This certainly was a model of psychosis. So they're trying to create psychosis. Why would they be trying to create psychosis? Key, okay, MK Ultra, Osmond, working with MK Ultra, working with CIA and MI6. Aldous Huxley's personal doctor, the biggest psychopath that may have ever walked the earth. And Osmond watched them celebrating as though a form behind a thick glass wall. Osmond was no longer in England when he had his adventure with adrenochrome. In mid-1952, he accepted a job in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan as the clinical director of Saskatchewan Hospital. Clinical director of Saskatchewan Hospital. The place was touted as the finest mental hospital on the prairies, although this was something of a joke since it was the only mental hospital on the prairies. Actually, the place was so rank, so depressing 19th century madhouse that when Osmond and his colleagues received the APA Silver Plaque Award for the most improved mental hospital, American Customs declared the before pictures to be obscene, and special dispensation had to be obtained before they were allowed into the country. So, okay, so here is, let me get this straight, folks. You have a drug that's caused by fear and adrenaline and all of this, and Humphrey Osmond, a CIA doctor working in the Saskatchewan Mental Hospital, where people would be having psychotic experiences that would create floods of adrenochrome, somehow has a supply of this stuff there at the hospital, and not only that, he's testing it on himself. So why is he testing it on himself? Of course, Jay Stevens just glosses over that, but that should be key also. And then Dr. Humphrey Osmond goes and gives Aldous Huxley his first dose of mescaline, and then Aldous Huxley compares the mescaline to adrenochrome and the introduction of the doors of perception. So I'm just going to toss this out, folks. Here we have an elite group of people, the social engineers of society, who know about adrenochrome and are researching it. And, you know, they just happen to be the elite class that are trying to dumb the rest of us down. Now, I'm just saying, you know, but here we have our first instance of even Aldous Huxley and Humphrey Osmond being vampires. And so what we have is, you know, it's you know, the television and the movies have spun to create a cover story for what vampirism really is. And, you know, so the vampires do drink blood. They do get off on it. It does create a drug high, as we've just shown, and I have more citations here on this as well. But all of this shows that, you know, that the people behind MKUltra, these 6 psychopaths who were social engineering the rest of society, trying to create kill us off in these eugenics programs and mind controlling us at all, were related to vampiric behavior. And I'm going to throw it over to you for a few minutes and let you take over there, Caleb.
Wow. So these guys are taking adrenochrome like a drug so that they can trip out on it like it's acid, and it's got similar effects. I'm very interested in the effect that you're talking about with is adrenaline some sort of a precursor to a hallucinogenic experience, and how that all works. I'm really interested in this research now. So these are modern day people that we're talking about now. One would logically start to try to figure out where did this custom come from? How long has it been going on? Stuff like that. So my research led me to, you know, there's so many different places. I don't even know where to start. One of the earlier things that obviously pops up when you start to do this sort of research is vaccines and abortions and stuff like that. You start to notice that it's really interesting how when you go to the doctor to give blood, you know, it's where does all that blood go? How do we know for sure that all that blood is going to where we think it is for donation, and et cetera? You start to wonder what's really going on deep in if they're doing some really sick stuff in these mental hospitals, who knows what else is going on here. Now, you know, this is where we start getting really dark, when we start to figure out, you know, how deep this rabbit hole really goes. And are these people actually drinking blood? What are they doing with it? The first references that you come up with when you start studying vampires, one of them is Elizabeth Bathory, who is the Blood Countess of...
I'm going to show Dracula. Her on screen while you're talking there. Go ahead. Sorry.
So this lady's very interesting. First, I'll just mention what the folklore says about her, and as far as, like, you know, just mainstream type information says about her. Like, let's get to the nitty gritty stuff here. So she's basically gets accused of killing basically the most murderous woman in history is attributed to her name. Okay.
Well, so some 650 murders that she did.
Yeah, 650 murders. Okay, so and this happens around 1602 to 1604. Now, one of the things that you'll start to realize when you read all this is that Elizabeth is also suspected of cannibalism. She starts. They talk about how she has ties to the Kabbalah, the rituals of the Kabbalah. With, you know, bathing in blood, drinking blood,
young blood,
and it's always young blood. That's of the things.
That's why, and I Belong in the Kitchen just pointed out, oh my God, that's why they do or they do blood drives in the high schools. Young blood. She's already starting to piece it together.
Yeah, this is some really sick stuff, guys. So let's try to get through this. Now, I will say that once I started digging real deep into this Elizabeth Bathory person, I started noticing certain things that I've seen before, where certain groups of people try to cover up their tracks with misdirections, especially on like the official Wikipedia of these people and such. One of the things you'll notice is that um, all this stuff takes place in the Habsburg monarchy. Okay, so she's, they're saying they're trying to blame this on the Slavs. This is the Transylvania, um, the family.
Moldova, Transylvania.
Yeah, the Moldova family. Okay, so the thing that I've figured out mostly from Fomenko's methods. Anatoly Fomenko is a guy. If you don't know about him, please go check him out. Get as much grammar as you can before you just start, making up your mind about whether it's legit or not. His methods, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty sound, and now that I'm pretty savvy to his methods, I've been trying to cross reference his methods across other work, and this is not necessarily his work per se when I'm talking about this lady in particular. However, he does make a very strong case that the Habsburg monarchy is actually a reflection of a medieval Russian Empire with Ivan the Terrible and etc. And that's a big subject that has a lot of grammar. But I realize it's kind of difficult for people to make some of these jumps with me being so general when I'm saying this stuff. But all I want to get across is that I believe that this woman may have actually been a reflection of the story of Esther from the Bible, which would make a whole lot of sense because it would then link her and this family to the rest of the atrocities throughout history that I keep linking them to. And I'll get into more of the links, after this. Sometimes you run across something, you're like, well, why doesn't this fit into the puzzle piece? Well, a little bit more grammar, and sure enough, it fits. And where it fits is that the Habsburg monarchy that people are claiming her to be involved in is, if I'm correct, and that Fomenko's work is true about the story of Esther from the Bible being an actual story about a medieval Elena Volonchenka is the name of the real name of the story of Esther. Well, then that links this to the Purim, which is a really big deal because the Purim was a Jewish holiday that they celebrate that ended basically in the slaughter of
the people of Haman.
The people of Haman,
the
actual Christians.
And people should read the book of Esther for yourselves so that you can understand it. Esther's uncle Mordecai has Esther lie, and it's not a very long book here. As you can see, it's only 10 chapters. But Esther's uncle Mordecai has her lie to the king and to gain her favor. She's, like the most beautiful woman. The king divorces his wife, and he ends up marrying Esther. And, so Esther's Haman figures out what the Jews were doing, and that Mordecai had Esther lie, and Haman goes to the king to tell him, but the king had granted Esther one wish. And so just before Haman is able to tell the king everything that's happening, if I remember the chronology of the story right, Esther is granted her one wish, and her wish is to have all of Haman's 56 or 70,000 people or whatever they were killed. And so Haman, all of his sons, and everybody are killed, and then the Jews take over that land. And this happens, again, just before Haman tells the king what's happening. And so This is celebrated every year still to this day in the Jewish holiday called the Purim. Now, what Holly and I discovered, or what I had discovered, was that the word Puritan comes from the word Purim, and the Puritans were escaping England, and there was the evil king, and they were getting to the new land, and they compared the stories, their story, their plight, their flee from Europe, for the human sacrifices that they were doing, ding, 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 which is going to tie into vampirism, as well as usury and creating the plagues, which Holly and I covered in our shows on the Puritans being Jews, creating the plagues, and witchcraft. That's what the Witch's Cauldron is about. This is Halloween, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why they put this stuff in your face every year at Halloween is because they are mocking you. They put the celebration of these genocides and mass plagues right in your faces, and then they celebrate them and they mock us, and the people go around to collect candy at people's doors, which was how the witches would lure the children to the doors to, it appears, to be able to poison them and to test their witch's brews on them. And if you want to know what one of the witch's brews was, read the story of Shakespeare's Macbeth, Boil, Boil, Toil, and Trouble. It's laid out right there. You add in feces and cinnabar, which is mercury ore, and you begin to see the entire thing starting to play out. So, so the Puritans, of course, it all starts tying together into research that we've already done, and the Huxley family and adrenochrome and all of this stuff. So I just, because Holly and I had done that research and covered that, and the witchcraft, or the history of Salem shows, etc. I just wanted to give a little more detail on that. So back to you, Caleb.
Yeah, and also I'll have to send this right back to you, because I'm going to ask you for the citation here now on Elizabeth Bathory. Even if you just believe the official story of what they say on Wikipedia, and you're not into the whole narrative that I'm talking about, the other narrative, it still claims right here in her early years on Wikipedia that Elizabeth was raised a Protestant Calvinist. And if you don't know the history of the Protestant Calvinists, I'll let Jan say a little bit about that.
Well, the Calvinists were apparently Jewish, and sorry, hold on, let me just unpile this book here underneath the stack here. Sorry, I should have organized these in order. Oh, there goes the telephone. All right, so we have this book, and I've shown this book before. This is the Judaizing Calvin. And this book is about 500 years old. Digius Hunius, which is probably a pseudonym, who knows? But what they do is they go through and they show how Calvinism was really a Jewish break-off of Christianity. What the Puritans and other groups, crypto-Jewish groups, did in order to stay in Europe and other places where the Jews were being kicked out because of the human sacrifices and plagues and vampirism and things like that. They would put on pseudo forms of Christianity like Calvinism and like many of the Lutheran forms of Christianity and Protestant forms of Christianity. And they would be able to quote some things, but they weren't Christian. They were just using it as a cloak. And so, this book goes into how Calvin was essentially Judaic Christianism, as I coined it. They call it Christian Judaism, which is an inversion. It's Judaic Christianism. So, we have to invert their lies so that we understand, it's a Kabbalistic inversion, how they did that. So once we understand that, we can see it and begin to understand it. And thanks to Brian and who is the other one? Polygonal, for the donations. I think there was another one just now for $1. Thanks, Giovanni, as well. I appreciate all of your support. Everybody, please throw up. And then Holly says in the chat, Puritans collected moss on human bodies and then consumed it as medicine, and that's part of the corpse medicine that we learned while we were doing research in Salem. So anyway, back to you, Caleb.
Yeah, okay. So one thing here, maybe I'll share this screen here so people can see this reference here. Okay, so One of the references I found here, this is a blog, Truth Zone forum. It's just a forum people are talking about. So here's one group of people that have figured out that you'll read right here that this Elizabeth Bathory, they call her the Blood Jewess. They've got a bunch of information in here talking about how her practices were steeped in the Kabbalah, with bathing and drinking the blood of others to keep her young
blood.
young being, and we would call that Satanism. So we've got this girl linked to these blood libels is what we're calling them here. So now this is in the 1600s. Okay, now further on down the line we get to Vlad the Impaler. I have a ton of grammar to get through for Vlad. I was just telling Jan, I didn't even have enough time to prepare for as much stuff that I found on Vlad today. And I'm probably going to have to do a whole nother show just to go through all of it, because there is so much about him as far as the controversies involved in whether or not he was actually, doing some of these things, who he was doing them to. The story, some of the grammar that I have to present later is pretty interesting stuff, but I don't want to give it all away because I'm not 100% on it yet. I still need to make sure, but I will say, you'll see right here, multiple references to Moldavia, just like the other references we were just showing before with the other lady. So Elizabeth and Vlad the Impaler might have a similar type of a situation where you can use Fomenko's methods and link them over and figure out what was really going on there in history. This might be a cover up. One of the pieces of grammar that I found earlier was a Red Ice interview on Vlad the Impaler, and they do a pretty good job of going through some history without having the Fomenko stuff. They do miss the mark, I believe. So I'm going to have to go through and take Fomenko's methods and try to plot these people and fit them into the narrative and see how it works out. That's going to be a whole bunch of extra work in the future. But as far as down from the line from this, you get to Sabbataya Zevi. And so right after this lady in the early 1600s, then you get, so if I'm correct, then the story of the Purim and all of this timeline happens with Elena Volonchenka, a.e. the story of Esther or Judith in the Bible. And if people want more grammar on that, I have a ton of grammar screenshotted with a ton of notes with all the primary sources that can link Lena Volonchenka.
Would you
Esther
scroll up a second and show folks that image that you just showed? That's one of the ones that we scroll back down.
Oh, the blood libel.
Yep.
This one. Yeah. So.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so this is actually them causing massive bleeding in the children that they would use, and they would extract the blood from them. But this is why the Moyle rabbi sucks the baby's penis during the circumcision, is he's getting off on the adrenochrome and you can see them here. They're actually cutting the baby's penis there, but they're getting off on the adrenochrome in the blood from that.
Yeah, so the dark part about this is we're starting to realize that the modern day adrenochrome stuff might just be a further continuation of some of this stuff from the past here. And this is some dark stuff. Why are these people doing this? What are they doing? So if it has to do with the adrenal glands, and what they do is they scare and they torture these people, so that, or these young people they kidnap, however they get these victims, so that when it's trauma, they traumatize them, and once they traumatize them, it gets into the blood, the adrenaline goes into the blood, something happens where, they know they can drink the blood, and, they almost view it as a source of energy. So that's where these myths are coming from. So what we're saying here is that the actual myths of these vampires have some foundation in history. And what I'm saying is some of these people that they're blaming to be the vampires from these movies and from these myths might be a misdirection, and the actual vampires may in fact be, covering it up, the people who have been doing this. And what I'm basically saying is that this is a ritual that's been going on for a very long time. And I'll just say that a lot of grammar, if you want a lot of grammar, if you guys can see this, it's a documentary called Jewish Ritual Murder. It's dark. I know it's hard to get through some of this stuff, and
Yeah, there you go. There's one down there. You have the rabbi explains the importance of slurping baby blood.
yeah, this is some really dark stuff, guys, but it does need to be looked at. We need to understand our enemies, and we need to figure out what their crimes are. We got to do some investigative.
This is some dark
research.
satanic stuff.
But I do recommend you go ahead and get the grammar. I'll get as much grammar. I've presented a whole bunch of stuff here. I'd like for people to do a little bit of homework and start looking into some of this grammar here. There's a Sandra Bullock and Ellen DeGenerate interview where they're talking about putting the circumcision skin of babies' penises on their face as facial creams. I mean, this is some really messed up stuff. There's a bunch of rabbis that have been accused of kidnap and torture. Go ahead and watch all these, and do the investigation for yourself. Don't take my word for it.
It's not, just don't get caught into emotional buzzwords like anti-Semitism or something like this. Look at the actual research. And these court cases have been going on. There are many records of these types of court cases going back 500 years or more.
Yes, sir. All right. And now I guess I'll talk just for a little bit about, sorry for jumping around. I'd like to go back to what I would say is the earlier links to linking paganism, Judaism, and all these different sacrificial human sacrifices back to the earliest forms that we can find in history with references. And so I took this reference here from the one of the pages on Anatoly Fomenko's new book called How It Was in Reality. So he says, in the 12th through 13th century, all three places enjoyed great respect. Here, numerous pilgrims used to arrive. It was the time of royal Christianity. Christ was worshipped and was called Zeus, Dionysus, Apollo, etc. Mother Mary of God was also referred to by different ancient names. In Jerusalem, which is Tsargrad, in Bakos, Golgotha, and also in Crimea, the ancient temples and shrines dedicated to Andronicus Christ were erected, who is the actual person who lived, who embodied the teachings of Christ from the Bible. His medieval name, Andronicus. He was an emperor. Blood sacrifices would take place there, among them quite possibly human ones, such as the character of royal Christianity at that time. After the victory of the apostolistic Christianity, the royal Christianity began to be called the primal Judaism and paganism. Okay, so Anatoly Fomenko is linking paganism to Judaism. I hate to be the bearer of bad news to all you guys out there who are really into paganist beliefs.
Renegade Radio et al., all of you people that think paganism predates Christianity, you need to look a little bit deeper. And we're going to be going into a lot more research on why paganism stems from Judaism and not, it's not a precursor to Christianity. You have to understand logos And once you understand logos, then that would be the thesis. The antithesis would be all of these other things that come afterward, really. But, so you have all of these pagan practices of blood rituals and sacrifices and drugs and all of this stuff. Well, what are we talking about right here, folks?
Yep. So what happens at the end of the 14th century? So this is important because it gives us a timeline for all of this stuff, okay, that we read about in the Bible. At the end of the 14th century, after the Battle of Kulkovo in the Great Mongolian Empire, the apostolic Christianity was adopted as the state religion. Okay, that's when the blood sacrifices were banned. From the end of the 14th century, royal Christianity was declared as paganism, primal Judaism. Okay, so paganism came out of the original Christianity. That is to say, a false cult. Okay. Now, this cult's name was the Bacchanalian cult. So this Bacchanalian cult who worshipped Dionysus and basically sex and it was a huge inversion of what Christianity originally meant. They invert it. And then, so here we continue that to a false cult. Hostility to it began, which also affected the attitude to the former relics. The places of worship themselves were preserved because they were Christian, but terminology, ritualism, and many other things which create the external appearance as well as the forms of customs changed. As before, the faithful would arrive to visit the holy places. However, by then, they would generally be the apostles' Christians. The former pagan past of the relics had begun to be forgotten and turned into a well-respected, but nevertheless someone else's past. And they pushed it way back into antiquity so that they could cover up their tracks. That's what they did with history, folks. That's why this flamenco stuff is so important. They're trying to cover up their past, and flamenco gives us a lot of methods that allow us to reconstruct this stuff so we can figure it out. The new priests would slightly change their old names, which would compound the confusion in people's minds. Eventually, the Christians were made to think that Zeus, Apollo, Dionysus were some ancient deities, and the deep past of Bacchus, Chafut, and Violent was by no means Christian, but in fact pagan. Okay, so why is this important? This is important because it shows what I'm trying to show here is that what happened in the very beginning of the Crusades, when they went to avenge the death of Christ, this guy who is this polymath named Andronicus, what happened is they had these wars, and the wars went back and forth, and they kicked out all of the people from the empire. These are the stories that you get from the money changers and the Bacchanalian cults, the Saturnalian cults, whatnot. All these people performing these sacrificial rituals. Okay, now these sacrificial rituals, what happened is they end up going all the way throughout history under different cults, under the guise of different cults. One of the cults that they go under was the cult of the bull, the Mithraic cult, the cult of Dionysus. These are all names of the cult that was worshiping the bull. Okay, now there's a whole bunch of material I have on the bull specifically, but as far, I don't want to segue too far off into any tangent. I'd like to get to the fact that these same groups of people like Sabbatai Zevi are these descendants of, this rabbi, by the way, if you don't know Sabbatai Zevi, he's this Jewish rabbi, Sephardic ordained rabbi, one of the probably
he's considered the Jewish Messiah.
The Jewish Messiah, one of the most evil peoples ever to live in history, I would say. And I know that's a big, tall claim to make, but if you really look into him, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Look into a YouTube channel called The Rape of Justice. does a pretty good job of getting people on there like Henry Macau and such, talking about the past of Sabbatai Zevi. It's dark. I don't, it's not something that I like to get into, but if you want this grammar, you want to understand where these people came from and how this all happened, he's a key figure. Okay, so Sabbatai Zevi, then you get into, from Sabbatai Zevi, you get into Jacob Frank, and then the Order of the Illuminati by Adam Weishaupt. These are all messiahs that claim to be reincarnations of the Messiah. So this is what they believe. Okay, this is what I don't know what I believe, but I just want you to know what they believe. Okay, now for more grammar, if you're interested in more grammar on that subject, I highly recommend you watch a YouTube documentary, a short documentary that you will have to, let's see, it is called The Zion King, I believe. And there are short excerpts of it that you can find that will give you, here, let's see if I can find it real quick. That will give you a lot more grammar as far as who these bloodlines have continued to be. How is the link between Princess Diana and the Goldsmiths and the Rothschilds and all these people? It just, you keep seeing the same patterns of people keep popping up. There's also a documentary I would recommend right here called The Synagogue of Satan. This will give you most of the grammar you need. And I don't have time to go over all of it. There's probably 10 hours of documentaries in here, but I just wanted to kind of lay that out for people who are interested in more grammar. Now, another interesting thing that you'll notice in our recent history, in Berlin during the Weimar Republic, if you've studied World War II in depth, you'll realize that a lot of this same type of accusations were being made against these same people, these same people throughout history that we're talking about, the Jews. Now, these guys are...
let me just interject, Caleb. We had watched a documentary. Caleb had sent it to me that shows that most of the Christian sainted children were actually victims of this Jewish practice and blood sacrifice, and that they were sainted because they were martyred by the Jews in these rituals. And there are, many dozens of historical legal cases, etc., showing this. It's not just, it's always spun as just anti-Semitic stories, but when you get into it, these are real legal cases. There's real evidence. Of course, we don't have photographs and recordings of something from the 15 or 1600s or 1700s, etc. But, as far as the testimony of two or more people establishing, witnessing it, and dead bodies and weapons and evidence, it's there. So this isn't just some anti-Semitic stuff. So what they have done is, over the centuries, they've turned all of this stuff into stories of mythical vampires in order to cover up the practice of the blood libel. They call it the libel as their cover word, so that nobody investigates this stuff. But they create the stories to cover over the reality of the blood libel ritual, so that people don't investigate it. And if you just use the word, oh, that's anti-Semitic, 90% of the population, their brain will shut off and they won't look beyond that point. So you have to, be willing to actually get into the facts. And thanks both to Anthony and Polygonal for their donations just now. Fibonacci says, as well as Dr. John D. That's absolutely correct. He was one of these guys who is involved in a lot of this stuff as well. So Emanuel Swedenborg probably as well. All of the old spy masters, probably Hassani Sabah. But, who knows how far it goes. But, it's very interesting that even the CIA, through Aldous Huxley, start off, kick off their MK Ultra psychedelic revolution crap with adrenochrome in the introduction of Aldous Huxley's book, Doors of Perception.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was about to ask you. So I got my notes, but before I go on to my notes about the human sacrifice stuff, I wanted you to go ahead and read some of those Bible quotes from John and Corinthians, if you got those up.
Okay, so well, we should probably read. What I should do is I want to give some preface to the Old Testament first before I jump to the end. And thanks to 46 and Trump for the $1.99 donation there. Thanks all of you for all your support. And I'll throw the link up for donating on the website too. You can also support us on Patreon. That's a really good way to support us as well. I love to see people support over there, and I'll try to start putting original content over there soon for him. First, yes, Dr. John Dee was a spy master for Queen Elizabeth, probably the first spy master. But Aleister Crowley, all of these guys were spy masters. Aleister Crowley was probably behind the creation of MI6, if I remember correctly. So. Anyway, let's. Thanks to Candor, says good show, Jan and Caleb. Excuse me. So anyway, let me get to these citations here, and there's a lot of these. Now, first off, what I want to do is say that, or I'm going to start off with the definition of vampire, which, we should probably define the terms. We probably should have started off with that to begin with. But vampire, from Magyar, vampire, a word of Slavonic origin occurring in the same form in Russian, Polish, Czech, and Serbian and Bulgarian, with such variants as Bulgarian vapir, Ruthen vapir, vopir, opir, Russian upir, upir, Polish upior, Miklosic, excuse me, my Serbian jezik is getting old and unpracticed, suggests North Turkish Uber, which, now, those of you who take an Uber, that means actually that's witch. That comes from witch or vampire. So that's what they're doing. That's the joke with the Uber going on right there, and that's from the OED there. I'll just show that here. I'm going to cover you up for a minute while I'm discussing this stuff, Caleb. So you can see Uber witch right here. And so paternal being of malignant nature in the original and usual form of belief and reanimated corpse. Now that's kind of not so per se, probably misdirection. Supposed to seek nourishment or do harm by sucking the blood of sleeping persons, a man or woman abnormally endowed with similar habits. So, obviously people who do human sacrifices are real. And a person of malignant or loathsome character, especially one who preys ruthlessly upon others, a vile and cruel extractor or extortioner. So anyway, going on to Genesis here, Genesis 9:4, but the flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. So what is being described in these passages I'm about to read is that the blood is what gives you your life. It's what gives life and animation to your soul. So when you slaughtered an animal to eat it, it was forbidden to eat or consume, drink the blood. You had to bloodlet the animal first, and then once that was done, then you could eat the meat of the animal. But because it was the life force, you didn't do that. So the Satanists, the vampires, the Aleister Crowleys and their ilk, they see that and they say, okay, well, God forbids it, so we're going to go out and we're going to do it. And so they consume the blood, they figure out the adrenochrome theory, etc. So in Exodus, and there's a lot of good ones here, Exodus 12:5-10, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and ye shall keep it up until the 4th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it upon the 2 side posts and the upper door post of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And so, okay, so they're supposed to do this ritual over the doorway where they're supposed to eat this sacrificial meat. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread. And the bread becomes key. We're going to see the bread theme running throughout. And with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with the legs, and with the pertinence thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until morning, and that which remaineth of it until morning ye shall burn with fire. And then Leviticus 3:6 through 17. This one is a bit long. And if offering the sacrifice of peace, and this is a peace offering, ladies and gentlemen, a peace offering. And notice, all of these you're supposed to burn with fire. What is a holocaust? Well, it's a burnt offering. So, and that's not a German word, ladies and gentlemen. The word holocaust is not a German word. And we're going to see a little bit how the blood of the lamb starts to play in through this for those who want to read between the lines on that. But so Leviticus 3:6, and if his offering for a sacrifice of peace offering unto the Lord be of the flock, male or female, he shall offer it without blemish. Okay, it's got to be the most pure, the one that's without blemish. And if he offer the lamb for his offering, then he shall offer it before the Lord, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of his offering and kill it before the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron's sons shall sprinkle the blood thereof around upon the altar. Okay, so see that we see that these are blood animal sacrifices that the Jews practiced when they did these types of sacrifices, Jesus becoming the last sacrifice, and we'll talk about that as we continue here. And he shall offer the sacrifice of the peace offering, an offering made by fire, again, a burnt offering, unto the Lord. The fat thereof and the whole rump he shall take off hard by the backbone, and the fat that covereth inwards, and all the fat is upon the inwards. And the two kidneys and the fat that is upon them, which is by the flanks, and the caul above the liver with the kidneys, he shall take away, and the priest shall burn it upon the altar. It is the food of the offering made by fire unto the Lord. And if his offering be a goat, then he shall offer it before the Lord, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of it and kill it before the tabernacle of the congregation. And the sons of Aaron shall sprinkle the blood thereof upon the altar round about. And he shall offer thereof his offspring, even an offspring made by fire unto the Lord. There's that word fire again. And the fat covereth the inwards, and all of that fat is upon the inwards, and the two kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, which is by the flanks, and the caul above the liver, which with the kidneys it shall he take away, and the priest shall burn them upon the altar. It is the food of the offering made by fire for sweet Savior. All the fat is the Lord's. It shall be a perpetual state for your generations throughout all your dwellings, that ye eat neither fat nor blood. There's your low-fat diet origins right there. But don't go eating blood, folks. Good grief. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, Ye shall eat no manner of fat of ox or sheep or of goat, and the fat, and this is Leviticus 7:23 and forward, and the fat of the beast that dieth of itself, and the fat of that which is torn with beasts may be used in any other use, but it shall in no wise eat of it. For whatsoever eateth of the fat of the beast, of which men offering an offering made by fire unto the Lord, even the soul that eateth it shall be cut off from his people. So, and then here we go. Moreover, ye shall eat no manner of blood, whether it be of fowl or of beast, in any of your dwellings. Whosoever soul it be that eateth any manner of blood, even the soul shall be cut off from his people. Okay, so wait a second. Vampires are cut off from the people. They're cut off from the rest of the society. They are banished. They're outside. They're dead people. They're outside the regular community because they've consumed the blood. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, He that offereth the sacrifice of his peace offerings unto the Lord shall bring his oblation unto the Lord of the sacrifice of his peace offerings. So these are peace offerings, folks. These are holocausts. Each one of these is a holocaust. It's a burnt offering. Okay? So, I'm not even going to say that. I mean, some of you can read between the lines. I'm not even going to say it. But, even the OED spends the word Holocaust as being originally a Greek word. I think that is a big farce. And Leviticus 17:10, and wheresoever a man be that of the house of Israel, or the strangers that sojourn among you, that eateth any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that soul that eateth blood, and I will cut them off from his people. Again, there's the segregated vampire group that's never a part of the regular society. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I give it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that maketh the atonement for your soul. Therefore I said unto the children of Israel, no soul of you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger that sojourn among you eat blood. So again, no one is allowed to eat blood. Of course, the Satanists see that and they go, hey, yeah, we got to go do that, man. Yeah, that's really cool because we're going to reverse engineer everything the Bible says because we're so smart. Oh, my God, such childish mentality. And whatsoever a man be there of the children of Israel or of the strangers that sojourn among you, which hunteth and catcheth any beast or fowl that may be eaten, he shall even pour out the blood thereof and cover it with dust. For it is the life of all flesh. The blood of it is for the life thereof. Therefore I say unto the children of Israel, ye shall eat the blood of no manner of flesh. For the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. The life of all flesh is the blood thereof. Okay, so this is why they're eating this. This is why Satanists do this, because it's specifically ordered for them not to, and because they have no, original thought but to do the antithesis. And then eateth it, and they shall be cut off. Again, those who eat it are cut off from the rest of society. And every soul that eateth which died of itself, or that which was torn with beasts, whether it be in one of your own country or a stranger, he shall both wash his hands and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening, or even, which is the evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he wash them not, nor bathe his flesh, then he shall bear his iniquity. And then Leviticus 19:26, and there's a few more here I want to get to. We're starting to get maybe. These are pretty good, though. It breaks it down because I really want people to understand what these blood sacrifices were, what they really meant, and understanding what the blood was and the sacrifice so that you begin to understand. And then we're going to tie it up to the eventual sacrifice of Jesus Christ, the true origin of the blood of the Lamb, right? So, and he takes the final sacrifice for everyone's sins, so that we can all come to logos, or truth. Behold, the people shall rise up a great lion, and this is Numbers 23, and lift up himself as a young lion, and he shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink the blood of the slain. So here's an antithesis one. And, I tried to figure out what the meaning of that was. I didn't get quite to it, but that one actually says the antithesis. Now going to Deuteronomy 12:15, notwithstanding thou may kill and eat the flesh in all thy gates, whatsoever thy soul lusteth after. Here it is, folks. Notwithstanding thou may kill and eat the flesh in all thy gates, whatsoever thy soul lusteth after. So if it's in the gates of your territory or land or property, you can kill any living thing that your soul lusteth after and use it for a sacrifice, according to the blessing of the Lord. So now we're getting to the sacrifice of people that, that were not of the group. And thanks, Bahara, for that. And thanks, everyone, for your support. So there's a few more here I want to try to get to. And then, so, we begin to see with this, according to the blessing of the Lord, which he giveth thee, the unclean and then the clean may eat thereof, as the roe and as of the hart. Those are roebuck and as of the hart. Those are two types of deer. And only ye shall not eat the blood. Ye shall pour it upon the earth as water. Thou may not eat within thy gates of thy corn, or of thy wine, or of thy oil, or of the firstlings of the herd of thy flock. Of course, there's the firstlings. Don't sacrifice the firstlings. Don't sacrifice 1-year-olds. So what are the Satanists going to do? Well, they gotta go do that. So that's they're so original. So, nor any of you thy vows which thou vowest, nor thy free will offerings, or heave offering of thine hand. And then Deuteronomy 12:22 forward. Even as the roebuck and the hart is eaten, so thou shalt eat them. The unclean and the clean shall eat of them alike. Only be sure that thou not eat the blood, for the blood is the life. The blood is the life. Young blood, vampirism, they live forever. The blood is the life. They're going to get rejuvenated. They're going to be young again. They're going to be Sandra Bullock and these people talking about, that was baby circumcisions. But this is the purpose of this. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is all laid out in the Bible. This is why they don't want you to read the Bible, because it's all laid out there. The blood is your life. If the blood is drained out of you, your life goes away. You can take a liver, you can take a kidney out, you can take lots of things out, and people will survive for a long time. You cannot take the blood out, or the animal dies. Thou shalt not eat it, thou shalt pour it on the earth as water. Thou shalt not eat it, that thou may go well with thee, and with thy children after thee. Okay, so if you don't eat it, your children will go on after you. And then thou shalt do which is right in the sight of the Lord. That which is right, that which is correct, that which is true in the sight of the Lord. Only thy holy things which thou hast, and thy vows, thou shalt take, and go unto the place which the Lord shall choose. And thou shalt offer thy burnt offerings, the holocaust, the flesh and the blood, upon the altar of the Lord. So you got to give the flesh and the blood upon the altar of the Lord. And the blood of thy sacrifice shall be poured out upon the altar of the Lord, and thou shalt eat the flesh. And then Deuteronomy 15:19, and the first males that come of thy herd and of thy flock, thou shalt sanctify unto the Lord thy God, and thou shalt do no work with the firstlings of thy bullock, nor shear the firstlings of thy sheep. Thou shalt eat it before the Lord thy God year by year in the place which the Lord shall choose, thou and thy household. And if there be any blemish therein, if it be lame or blind or have any ill blemish, you shall not sacrifice it unto the Lord. So you got to take the most pure animal for your holocaust, for your burnt offering, for your sacrifice. They have to be the most pure, the most, the purest blood of the lamb for the sacrifice. Thou shalt eat it within thy gates. The unclean and the clean person shall eat it alike, as the roebuck and the hart thereof. Only thou shalt not eat the blood thereof. Thou shalt pour it on the ground as water. And then 1 Samuel, and here it gets really interesting, because now we see they're getting high off of honey. So, and this is 1 Samuel 14:26. But Jonathan heard not what his father charged the people with, the oath. Therefore he put forth the end of the rod that was in his hand, and dipped it in the honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes were enlightened. And then answered one of the people and said, Thy father straitly charged the people with an oath, saying, Cursed be the man that eateth any food this day. And the people were faint. Then Jonathan, My father hath troubled the land. See, I pray to you, how mine eyes have been enlightened, because I tasted a little of this honey, and I've done, there's psychedelic honey, as common bees eat flowers of they pollinate and gather the pollen of psychoactive plants, and it gets into the honey. And this was very common. In fact, a whole Roman army was laid to sleep eating some of this honey. So how much more if happily the people had eaten freely to this day of the spoil of their enemies, which they found. For had there not been now a much greater slaughter among the Philistines, had they smote the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon, and the people were very faint. And the people flew upon the soil and took sheep and oxen and calves and slew them on the ground, and the people did eat them with blood. So there's that, they betrayed God. They ate the animals with blood. Then they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people sin against the Lord, and they eat with blood. And he said, Ye have transgressed. Roll a great stone unto me this day. And Saul said, Disperse yourselves among the people, and say unto them, Bring me hither every man his ox, and every man his sheep, and slay them here, and eat, and not sin against the Lord in eating with the blood. And all the people brought every man his ox with him that night, and slew them there. And then Psalms, good grief. There's probably like another page of this. But I'm just trying to lay the foundation so that people can really grasp what a blood sacrifice is, what vampirism is, why the vampires are rejected by God because they're consuming the blood, which is even against the Torah and the Tanakh and the Old Testament, etc. So Psalms 50:12 forward, If I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine, and the fullness thereof. Will I eat the flesh of bulls and drink the blood of goats? Offer unto God thanksgiving, and pay thy vows unto the Most High. And call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. And then Ezekiel 33:24 forward, Son of man. Okay, what is Jesus again? Oh, Son of Man. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they sacrificed him too, didn't they? Oh, yeah, Son of Man. They that inhabit those wastes of land of Israel speak, saying, Abraham was one, and he inherited the land, but we are many, and the land is given to us for inheritance. Oh, wait, they lost their inheritance, didn't they? They were all sent wandering for hundreds of years. And that's why they're trying to establish Israel in Palestine, because they lost the lands of their inheritance. And they're trying to recreate it falsely without earning the right back, without living in truth and accepting logos. Wherefore say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God, and ye eat with blood, and lift up your eyes toward your idols, and shed blood, and shall ye possess the land? So he's saying, ye eat with blood, ye lift up yourselves toward your idols, and ye shed blood, and ye shall possess the land of your inheritance? He's saying, no way. Ye stand upon your sword, ye work abomination, and ye defile everyone his neighbor's wife, and ye shall possess the land? Say thou thus unto them, Thus saith the Lord God, As I live, surely they that are in the wastes shall fall by the sword, and him that is in the open field will I give to the beast to be devoured, and they that be in the forest and in the caves shall die of the pestilence. For I will lay the most desolate, and the pomp of their strength shall cease, and the mountains of Israel shall be desolate, that none shall pass through. This is because they're eating blood and doing this vampiric behavior. So this is why they lost their land inheritance. This is why they were sent wandering. This is why they were excluded from the rest of the people and the other tribes. Now it all starts making sense. We start to get the bigger picture, folks. They weren't just the, I use the analogy, it's always the good guy who doesn't get in any trouble at the party and doesn't start any fights, etc., who always gets kicked out of the party, right? Oh, wait, no, it's not. It's the one who always causes trouble. So are the people who get kicked out of every country on earth the ones that are causing trouble, or the good guys? You got to think. Ezekiel 39:17, And the Son of Man, saith the Lord, Speak unto every feathered fowl and to the beast of the field, assemble yourselves, and come gather yourselves on every side to my sacrifice, that I do sacrifice for you, even a great sacrifice upon the mountains of Israel, that ye may eat flesh and drink blood. And ye shall eat the flesh of the mighty, and drink the blood of the princes of the earth. of the rams, of the lambs, of the goats, of the bullocks, all of them fatlings of Bashan. And ye shall eat the fat till ye be full, and drink the blood till ye be drunken. Drink the blood until ye be drunken of my sacrifice, which I have sacrificed for you. Thus ye shall be filled with my table, with horses and chariots, with mighty men. I mean, this is talking about human sacrifice, it sounds like to me, ladies and gentlemen. With all the men of war, saith the Lord God. And I will set my glory among the heathen, and all the heathen shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. So shall the house of Israel know that I am the Lord their God from that day forward. And the heathen shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity, because they trespassed against me. Therefore I hid my face to them and gave them unto the hand of their enemies. See, when you become a slave, folks, it's due to your own iniquity, not because somebody else is suppressing you. You got to get a clue, man, and stop blame casting. Good grief. So they all fell by the sword. According to their uncleanliness and according to their transgressions, I have done unto them and hid my face from them. So they fell. They were the fallen people. They were the Judases, Judases, Judaism, the judges, the judicial. That's I mean, come on, put it together, folks. All right, here we go. We're finally there. Are we ready, Caleb?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, okay, I mentioned the bread earlier and the blood. So now we're going to start to get the picture of the sacrifice that Jesus was. And so, Jesus was really the last sacrifice. Jesus was calling an end to all of this crap, all of this vampirism, all of this blood libel, murderous sacrificing crap. And so this was to be it. And of course, those who rejected Logos or truth is God, they're still doing this behavior that we can see with Aldous Huxley and Al Hubbard and Humphrey Osmond and the 60s CIA hippie Satanists and all of that stuff. So John 6:48, I am that bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread from which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. Okay, so he's taking away the blood, and he's saying, do it in remembrance of me. Do it all on me. If you eat the bread in remembrance of me, you'll live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, and I will give for the life of the world. So he's like, just enough. This is it. You're going to do this in remembrance of me. Drink the wine, drink the water, eat the bread in remembrance of me. It's done. The Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, how can this man give his flesh to eat? Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man, there it is again, and drink his blood, ye have no life left in you. No life. They're fallen. They've rejected Logos. They've fallen. They have no life left. Whosoever eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood hath eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is meat indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He that eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood dwelleth in me, and I in him. As the living Father has sent me, the living Father, that's the heavenly Father, that's God, I live by the Father, that's truth, Logos, and he liveth by me, even he shall live by me. This is that bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. Now, of course, that is all inverted and spun to go eat the blood of children and everything to live forever, the young blood, etc. And we get into Corinthians here, and then this is it. And this is Corinthians 11:23 forward. For I have received the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night which he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, "Take and eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me." After the same manner, he took the cup, and when he had supped, saying, "The cup is the New Testament of my blood. The cup is the New Testament of my blood. Do this do ye as oft as ye drink it in remembrance of me." So he's like, enough. He takes the cup, he sipped it, saying, "This cup is the New Testament. Forget your old covenant, forget your bloodletting rituals, forget your blood libel and your vampirism. This is what you're going to do from now on. It's done." And let's see, continuing on, 11:26, "For as often as ye eat of the bread, drink of the cup, ye shew the Lord's death till ye come. Therefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord." So if you don't drink it, if you don't do it properly under Logos and for truth, you're going to be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. So you're doing it in vain again, like the vampires. "But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat that bread and drink that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. For if we judge ourselves, we should not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world. Wherefore, my brethren, ye shall come together to eat, tarry for one another. And if any man hunger, let him eat at home, that ye come not together unto condemnation. And the rest I will set in order when I come." So, he lays it out and he puts an end to the whole thing and says no more of the, blood sacrifices, and he sacrifices himself. And so thanks to Bahare and Anthony and all of you who've donated, he says, "I'm glad that you're using the principles of Scripture to expose the societal ills. People need to at least read the Bible with an open, critical mind." Very well said. It's essentially it's your owner's manual. So just get over it and read it. It's not going to kill you to read it. So see if I can close that thing. I don't know what the heck. It's not letting me close it now. Anyway, go ahead, Caleb. Your turn.
So yeah, man.
My throat's killing me after that. So you got to take it.
Yeah, that was a lot of good grammar there for us. So why do I keep bringing up the book of Esther? Just to reflect here, just to kind of make this a little bit digestible for people. So as far as I'm concerned, now that I've, I am very well aware of a lot of the different arguments. And the one that makes the most sense to me, as far as I'm concerned, the whole story of Esther is probably the best when you take flamenco's breakdown and narrative into consideration. That's when you see in the old times all these rituals were banned, right? Then all of a sudden they start creeping back in. Well, the key to the whole book of Esther thing is that Esther was a Jewess who infiltrated in and that's how they got their bloodline involved back into the empire. Before that, they were banned, right? So people are wondering, how did they get back in? Well, this lady Esther comes in, the whole story of Mordecai, her father, telling her not to tell anybody that she's a Jew. They hide their religion. They hide everything.
They tell her to lie, which, of course, Satan is the father of all lies. And you get, okay, so they're Satanists.
So then what happens is they infiltrate. She gets her bloodline to get on the throne by killing people. Now, and if I'm also correct about this Elizabeth lady, who, at this point it's still speculation, I would say, but I'm going to put something together because I don't think anybody's done this, put this connection together yet. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody else do the connection yet. So somebody's got to pioneer this work and do all the primary sources. But as far as I'm at right now, I don't think it's a stretch to say, so if this lady was as bad as we think she was, and she's actually a reflection of the story of Esther. So that's how you get this evil bloodline, this Bacchanalian cult who has been in the shadows, get back into the empire and then start to subvert. And then you see this flood, and it goes over the whole royal family of uh, of England and everything. And that's when you start to see later on, like I was saying before, all these other characters come into play. Well, they have roots in this Bacchanalian cult. Okay, so one other thing involved in that I wanted to talk about real quickly. Let me just share this real quick. So you go over and you start learning more about the sacrifice of the cult of the bull. You start to realize modern um, historians, Scaligerian historians. See, all these people get this wrong. They need to go get um, more grammar on the subject, and they'll figure this out. This Minoan civilization was a seafaring civilization that flourished in the Mediterranean. Okay, and these guys are worshiping the bull, the minotaur, and so these guys are saying, these Scaligerian chronologists are talking about the term Minoan refers to King Minos and all this stuff. The cult of the bull, so I'm interested in, where did all this stuff originate? Now, like I was saying before about the book of Esther, well, check this out. In the chapter previous to this was all the whole chapter of the book of Esther.
And that's Fomenko. Why don't you tell them what book that is?
This is How It Was in Reality, the same book I've been talking about most of this time, as far as, like I said, this is the best way that I've seen. And I'm open to more, but as far as I'm concerned right now, this is the best I've seen as far as a reconstruction of history. I do believe that our history has been completely jumbled up and misrepresented. And so piecing together the past is what I'm interested in. And none of the puzzle pieces fit unless you get some of the big aha moments. And that's where I got them from How It Was in Reality and the first 5 books from Anatoly Fomenko. Now I'll just share. So turns out, again, the King Minos and the Minotaur are reflections of the dramatic events of the 16th and 17th century, when, guess what? The story of Esther, Elena Volonchenka, a heretic, and Ivan the Terrible's lover, they have the exact same story. This whole story plays out in the same way. It's another reflection. So that's just another really interesting piece of the puzzle, is all these worshiping of the bull keeps coming back to the story of Esther, who is Elena Volonchenka. To read more, to understand the book of Esther even deeper, I would recommend reading some of this stuff. But what's really interesting is Jan actually found a lot of this stuff out on his own without reading any of this. And while he's doing that research, I'm doing my own research into Fomenko.
Yeah, Holly and I were researching the book of Esther in relation to the Purim and the Puritans back over the summer. So all of this came up, and it was extremely important. It was like, here we go. And I knew the story was important. I hadn't. I'm reading this same book of Fomenko's as well. I'm, like 200 and some pages in, but I haven't gotten to this part yet. So, yeah, it's great stuff.
Yep. And so, of course, what do we see? We see the Purim, like you were just saying before. The Purim, this holiday is a Jewish dark holiday that celebrates them getting back in and winning the
that's
Holy War.
Okay, so that's what they're actually celebrating there, is they're getting their blood back into the royal bloodlines. They're not celebrating the murder of Haman per se. They're celebrating the winning of getting into the royal bloodlines.
Exactly. And that's so think about this. So the Esther is also Esther is another name for Ishtar. Ishtar is the supposedly the Sumerian, quote unquote, god, who when you read Fomenko, you realize who the Sumerians actually were. It's a lot different than you've been told. But the whole story about the woman that, this evil woman to us, but to the Jews is their savior, that gets them the war back, that up until this day they're still winning against us, is signified by, I would say, the Statue of Liberty, this goddess. Could that be Esther? Could that be the lady, the most evil lady that we're talking about? Could this Elizabeth lady that we were talking about, this vampire, be a reflection of her? These are the questions I have about what actually is this vampire myth. Is it really an actual historical thing that we've been led to believe is this myth, or a bunch of movies? But anyways, so another thing to consider, before I forget, I know we're coming up with we got to wrap things up pretty soon. I wanted people to know that the kosher industry, if you look into the kosher industry, if you're like me, you'll be horrified. The kosher industry is another representation, I would say, of these rituals.
Blood rights. And
blood rights, exactly. Except
do
the
you
only
want
difference
to
is,
you want to cancel the share screen there? If you're done.
yep, I'm working on that.
You got the wrong windows showing there. You got to hover over. It's probably on one of the top of your screens there, dude. Just hit end share. I can see the button down there on the bottom, but you got to cover it up there on the right. On the right, there, that one. Nope, meeting controls, and then there's a meeting controls. Nope. Back down on the bottom bar. Oh, dude. Good grief. That one, right side. Click that. Right side. Click that. Okay, somewhere on your screen you have the red button that is showing. You got to find it. Thank you. All right. Now get back on track.
Yeah. So what I was just saying about the kosher industry, be careful when you look into it. It's pretty dark, and it's just more of this whole thing that we're talking about. It's just with animals. They're completely savage when they cut the throats of these animals and just let them bleed out, and who knows what else they're doing. But the videos I've seen on YouTube are pretty bad. That's one thing I also wanted to mention. Another thing, circumcision. Look into circumcision. It's definitely a Jewish ritual that has continued, unfortunately, throughout the Western culture. And, I know a lot of people are controversial on that topic, but look into that as well.
People, what makes me sick, Caleb, is all of these feminist women who freak out over the female circumcisions happening on the other side of the globe in Africa, but they don't give a damn about the other half of the population here in the United States that crap is being done to. It's like, wake up, man. It's like you freaking hypocrites. But anyway.
Yeah. It's so that's what we're really trying to get to here. Is we're trying to piece together and try to figure out who is this enemy that has infiltrated, all aspects of our culture, and we're trying to take our culture back. And so unfortunately we have to get kind of grotesque on some of these things. I don't like covering this stuff, but it's a dirty subject. Somebody's got to do it. And I'm glad people are bearing with us. We have a whole ton of more information and grammar to bring out. I know I kind of just jumped over a lot of different things, and I have actually a whole bunch of outlines set up to try to make videos. Maybe put together some notes with all this laid out so it's more digestible for people. Let's see. Anything else we were going to mention?
Let's see. I think that's probably it for me. Oh, wait. You know what? I do have some more quotes here from Oh, wait, we haven't said it for a while. Ladies and gentlemen, Huxley. All right, so this is Moksha again. Actually, the fact had been staring everyone in the face for several decades, but nobody, as it happened, had noticed until a young English psychiatrist, at present working in Canada, was struck by the close similarity in chemical composition between mescaline and adrenaline. Further research revealed that lysergic acid, an extremely potent hallucinogen derived from ergot, has a structural biochemical relationship to the others. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so wait a second. Mescaline, LSD, psilocybin, and adrenochrome from blood vampirism are all structurally biochemically have a structural biochemical relationship. Then came the discovery that adrenochrome, which is the product of the decomposition of adrenaline, can produce many of the symptoms observed in mescaline intoxication. So when you hear of the frenzy of the vampire, of those who eat the blood of the moil and all of this stuff, who do this stuff, this is what the frenzy is about. It's not DMT. It's not like from the pineal gland or whatever. If, you know, even Rick Strassman's Scottish Rite Freemasonry funded research, Rick Strassman's the Jewish researcher that doctored in New Mexico that wrote DMT, the spirit molecule, if his research is to be believed. But adrenochrome, it's not the DMT, it's the adrenochrome that they're after. So let's see here. And then Oscar Janiger, who is the cousin of pedophile Allen Ginsberg, he says, and he was another MK Ultra operative for the CIA. He says it was Oscar Janiger was a Beverly Hills psychiatrist, and this is Jay Stevens from Storming Heaven, who preferred research to analysis, although he did just enough of the latter to pay for the leisure to indulge the former. He also taught a few courses at a local university, and it was there in 1954, after a lecture synopsizing the Osmond-Smythes adrenochrome thesis, that he was approached by a young man named Perry Bivens. Bivens was a professional diver. He worked for Ivan Tors, the producer of Sea Hunt, and he had his own private decompression chamber that he had built himself. It was while perfecting the chamber that Bivens discovered that he could alter his consciousness simply by changing the mix of gases. So, he's studying Osmond, they're all in cahoots. He's studying Humphrey Osmond, who was also MK Ultra, who's Aldous Huxley's doctor, who's MK Ultra, who's heading the whole thing, and they're, studying other ways of changing or altering consciousness. So then we start to see what all of this stuff is. This is Peter Stafford from, and we didn't even get into the frenzied accounts that Gordon Wasson covered up and Diego Duran's 16th century reports on the Aztecs' blood rituals. Oh boy, that we'll have to save that for part 2. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, Gordon Wasson tried to cover all of that up and make it all about a glorified New Age mushroom cult. So high-dose studies of rats suggest that psilocin, which is the active drug from psilocybin psychoactive mushrooms, taken orally, which we got from Maria Sabina and the Mazatec and the Aztecs, etc., the death cult that was the CIA peddled is lovely. Orally is distributed through the body. Concentrations in tissues appear highest about a half an hour after ingestion, decreasing rapidly over the next 3 or 4 hours. The adrenal glands of test animals show the highest concentrations after the first hour. Until then, the kidneys have more. Mm-hmm. So when you take these, psychedelic substances and mushrooms, the adrenal glands in the first hour are going to show the highest concentrations of the substances. Maybe because it's mimicking adrenochrome. The small intestine, skin, bone marrow, lungs, stomach, and salivary glands also have significant concentrations, greater in fact than those in the brain. And then MDA, the archetype and simplest member of this cluster was, and these are all Peter Stafford from this book here. I don't have the exact page numbers. I pulled them out of a PDF version. Sorry. If anybody needs the exact page numbers, send me an email and I'll dig them up. But the archetype and simplest member of clusters was first synthesized in 1910 by G. Manish and W. Jacobson, who described the process in a German journal. It wasn't until 1939 that animal tests were performed, and then the team of Gunn, Gerd, and Sachs became interested in the substance while conducting adrenaline studies. 2 years after, another team, Lohmann, Meyerson, and Meyerson, thought this compound might alleviate Parkinsonism, but discarded the idea when the drug produced muscular rigidity in the single patient tested. And then going on, let's see. Brimblechrome and Finder, in their hallucinogenic agents, page 116, discuss the possible metabolism routes which adrenoglomerulotropine and melatonin normally present in the pineal body may be turned into 6-methoxy-harmalan. Not harmaline, harmalan. So far, however, no evidence has conclusively shown that this conversion actually takes place in the human brain. So, and then he goes on, as with DMT, theories have been advanced that schizophrenia is associated with increased production of harmala alkaloids, which is like, paganum harmala, etc., which is often used as a in ayahuasca analog brews. As Shulgin has remarked, and that's Sasha Shulgin, who is DEA and Bohemian Grove, consensus among researchers now is that the approach is a red herring. And that's probably just Sasha Shulgin's own red herring to cover this crap up. And then, Sasha Shulgin created most of the designer drugs that are out on the streets today to screw up our youth and our brains. And then this one is from Sasha Shulgin, Pickle. Also, there had been interest in reports that adrenaline had become old and discolored, seemed to elicit central effects in man. The oxidation products were identified as deeply colored indolic compound adrenochrome and the colorless analog adrenolutin. The controversy that these reports created just sort of died away. They probably want those vampire, reports to just die off, because if you get that, then you start seeing the upper strata of all of the child sacrifices and Pizzagate and all of this stuff that these people are doing on that, on that top tier level there, all the vampires up there. That's what they're doing. The controversy that these reports created just sort of died away, and the adrenochrome family has never been accepted as being psychedelic. No one in the scientific community today is looking in and about this area. Nobody is researched. These not out in the public except for maybe Osmond and Smythes up there in Saskatchewan at the one mental hospital where they can extract people's blood and, cause all kinds of craziness so that they can get this stuff. That's just my speculation, but I'm guessing that's exactly what they were doing. Let's see. No one in the psychedelic community today is looking in and about the area, and at present, this is considered as an interesting historical footnote. In other words, leave it in the past. Don't bring it up. Forget about that vampire stuff that all of these bloodsuckers like to do and celebrate, So there it is, folks. That's the show for tonight, and we should be able to pull up a good part 2 on this. It is, of course, October, and for those of you who want to go back and get some more research on October, go back and see my show with Dr. Hans Utter, War of the Worlds, where we expose how they use fear and everything, and the manufacture of fear to manipulate people. And Caleb, go ahead.
So yeah, next time we'll try to cover things like psychic vampirism. That's one topic we'd like to talk about. Another thing that we'd like to talk about next time is a couple references that I found, trying to figure out what the wolf reference could be about.
Yep,
Have a couple ideas
lycanthropy.
about that.
Yep,
Yep.
I've been digging around about that the last couple of days, trying to figure it out. Quite haven't gotten there yet, but you had pulled something from flamenco to give some leads. And,
Hmm.
there's so much misdirection out there. It's probably the same misdirection as vampirism and witchcraft and
Hmm.
succubi and demons, which we're now starting to realize all of this stuff is real. It's just your understanding. So
Yeah.
if you think, anybody who thinks this stuff is real is crazy, no, they're not. It's just your lack of understanding how this stuff is real. It's your lack of depth. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to also talk a little bit more next time about certain things that are very interesting to me, from a critical thinking aspect. I'd really like to discuss channeling, certain things like possession, stuff like this, and try to link that all into a show. Hopefully, people will like these topics. It's October, so uh, it's not there isn't a better time to get all this out of the way. So get this dark stuff out of the way, and then just on a positive note, um, I don't want this to be fear porn or anything like that. I'd like people to, and I don't want people to play the victim and be like, "Oh, look at it's this group who's oppressing us." It's like we got to do something. We got to stand up, be a light in this sea of darkness. Hopefully, we can melt these vampires with some
with
sunlight.
the light of truth right there, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what vampires. It's probably not even sunlight. It's probably the light of truth that they can't stand, right?
Oh yeah,
Because then
exactly.
they get exposed for all of this stuff. So yeah, there you go. And if you do run into a vampire, shoot it with a garlic bullet or whatever you got to do.
Yes,
So.
sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks everyone for your support in the chat and all the super chats. Thank you for showing some donations. In fact, we forgot to ask those of you in the audience to send some donations Caleb's way. Caleb, you want to give your donation address as well?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat. It's mick.caleb@gmail.com. And by the way, guys, I'm trying to do full-time research right now. So if you have any questions, as far as the research that I have, I'm trying to do my best to put it all together. So much grammar, but I love sharing it. So I have no problem if you are interested in a little bit more, let me know. And I appreciate anything. Thank you.
All right, and that's it, folks. Have a good night. Take care.
Bye, everyone.